All right, let's dive into a really cool historical puzzle today. It's about a guy from ancient Greece and an invention that, when you first hear about it, seems, well, completely impossible. Let's get right into it. So the whole story centers on this man, Anacharsis. Now, he wasn't Greek, he was a Scythian, from way up north of the Black Sea. But in the 6th century BCE, he became a kind of celebrity in Greece. They saw him as this wise barbarian, an outsider who could look at their culture and see things they couldn't. He had a reputation for being super smart, super practical, and not afraid to speak his mind. And here's the big claim, the one that ancient writers loved to repeat. It's a simple, powerful idea. Anacharsis invented the anchor. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, this is exactly where our mystery starts. Because here's the thing. Anchors, or at least simple versions of them, like big old stones or baskets filled with rocks, they'd been around for ages. We're talking centuries before Anacharsis was even born. So how in the world could he have invented it? That's the puzzle we're going to piece together. To solve this, the very first thing we have to do is get our heads around what the ancients really meant when they used the word invented. Turns out, it's not quite what we think of today. So, this is absolutely key. For ancient folks, invention didn't always mean creating something from scratch out of thin air. A lot of the time, it actually meant taking something that already existed and making a game-changing improvement, adding a new feature that totally transformed how it worked. A good way to think about it is like the modern bicycle. Lots of people had messed around with weird two-wheeled contraptions, but we give credit to certain people for inventing the bike as we know it, the one that was actually practical. The story of Anacharsis and the anchor is just like that. He didn't invent the idea of anchoring, he perfected it. Okay, so what was this incredible improvement? Well, it was a technological leap that completely changed the physics of how an anchor does its job. Just look at the difference here. The primitive anchor is, well, it's just a dead weight. It tries to hold a ship by sheer friction. But in a storm, forget about it. The ship could just drag it along and end up on the rocks. The improved anchor, though, is a whole different beast. It has teeth, or flukes, that are designed to dig in and grip the seabed. It's an active tool, not a passive weight, and that makes it way, way more secure. And the big breakthrough, the thing that ancient tradition gives Anacharsis all the credit for, it was so simple. It was brilliant. It all came down to a single number, 2. The story goes that he was the one who added the second tooth, or fluke, to the anchor. See, maybe some anchors had one tooth before, but adding that second one balanced the whole thing out and made it way more likely to catch and hold. It's such a simple tweak, but it's what turned the anchor from a passive weight into an active, life-saving tool. All right, so now we know what he supposedly improved. But that leaves us with another huge question. Why him? Why did this awesome story get attached to a wise man from Scythia, of all people? Well, it's because Anacharsis was basically the perfect poster child for this kind of story. As an outsider, he had that fresh perspective to see improvements the Greeks might have just missed. His whole reputation was built on practical, common-sense wisdom, not some heady philosophy. Plus, he was already a famous, memorable character, which made him the perfect person to attach this important invention to. And it wasn't just the anchor. He was also credited with improving the potter's wheel. He kind of became this symbolic inventor in Greek culture, a figure who represented the power of practical smarts, especially when it comes from an unexpected place. So let's zoom out for a second, because this story is about way more than just one guy or one tool. It actually tells us something really deep about the ancient world itself. We have to remember, in a world like the ancient Mediterranean that completely depended on the sea, the anchor wasn't just some minor convenience. It was a critical piece of survival technology. A better anchor meant safer trade routes, more secure harbors, and a stronger navy. So, in improvement to its design, that had massive, real-world consequences, which is exactly why its invention story was a story worth telling. And what's really cool is that the story of Anacharsis gives us this great little toolkit for thinking like a historian. Anytime you hear an ancient invention story, you can just ask these 3 questions. This simple framework takes you from just accepting a myth to having a much, much richer understanding of how technology and history actually work. And this right here is the big takeaway. Ancient people weren't writing detailed engineering manuals. Instead, they attached important innovations to famous people. Saying Anacharsis invented the anchor was just a short, memorable way to remember that a huge improvement happened and to connect it to the kind of practical wisdom that he stood for. And that leaves us with a pretty fun thought to chew on. This whole thing isn't just ancient history. Think about the technology that we all use every day. How many of our big, celebrated inventions aren't really brand new creations, but are actually just brilliant, game-changing improvements on an idea that was already there? It's a pretty cool way to look at the world of innovation around us.